Hello, Warren residents. I'm your Treasurer Lorie Barnwell, and welcome to another episode of Money Talks, a series where we're on a journey together to find financial solutions to reach our goals and fulfill our dreams. Today we have a very special guest with us today, Councilman Jonathan Lafferty. Jonathan has spent years in the banking sector. He has tons of experience that he's going to go over with us today and talk about ways that banking and credit union accounts can really help us move forward financially. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Lorie. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your banking and financial background.
Absolutely. So I've been in the financial sector now for just over 2 decades and enjoyed a lengthy career both in the technology and the financial sector now. And so, looking forward to discussing the topics today, helping people understand the differences between the basic financial instruments that are out there and available to help people meet their financial goals.
Excellent. And I'm sure all my residents know too, before being your treasurer, I was also in the banking industry as well. Spent time as a personal banker, bank manager. So I think with our combined forces here, we probably have almost 4 decades of really financial experience that we were excited to give back to the residents. So when we talk about banking and whether it's a bank or a credit union, why have an account somewhere? What are your thoughts on that? Because I hear that question a lot from our residents who maybe don't bank or who are maybe leery of whether it's a bank or a credit union having an account there. What is the real what are some of the benefits of that, and why should they consider having a bank account?
2 things really that you want to consider are financial security and interest-bearing accounts. And so security, guaranteed by the federal government, the FDIC guarantees your savings account of up to $250,000. Now back, gone are the days of when people, buried money in their backyard or hid it in a mattress. We have that federal guarantee that your investments into your own accounts are protected and insured by the federal government. And that's, you think back to the early 1980s, I think it was March of 1980, when it was raised to $100,000. Mm-hmm. Now we're at $250,000. So if you have that much money in the banking industry, or you have that spread across, several different banks, you're in great shape, and that is all federally insured.
Excellent. So what I'm sure residents have seen on the news, some of these banking failures, not in Michigan per se, but still very talked about banking failures. So what you're saying is if a bank is FDIC insured and something happens with the bank, your money up to $250,000 is protected, correct?
Absolutely. The Frank-Dodd Act of 2010 that was signed into legislation by President Obama at the time, and that act actually solidified the $250,000 guarantee by the federal government in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, mm-hmm. and then more recently with the failure of SVB and others, that conversation has been renewed, and so they're looking at even further strengthened approaches for FDIC insurance.
Excellent, and I know that's a big thing for residents. They want their funds to feel secure, mm-hmm. and I think with some of these, this insurance obviously is a big thing, but also different banking regulations have changed. Even since 2008, there's more accountability on banks to really ensure that things cannot get to the point that a lot of places were in 2008, that their underwriting for different loans is going to help them stay, where they should be as a bank.
You're absolutely correct. And the federal government has really responded in times of crisis. And you look back in our not too recent history, actually very recent history was the COVID pandemic, mm-hmm. and where transactions in a standard savings account were limited by Regulation D.
Yep.
And Regulation D calls for a minimum or a maximum limit of transactions and withdrawals from those accounts. And that was meant to ensure that the banks had enough capital to ensure they could cover their withdrawals. And the changes post-COVID, it was April of 2020, when Regulation D was updated, and they said, we're going to relax the regulation. The banks still have their ability to self-impose, but the federal government said, we want consumers to have more access, easier access to their funds if they so need it. And then the banks had, their own regulations saying, we're going to temper this to a certain, to meet our customer demand.
Excellent. Yes, and I think that was a really great change, and it gives residents more of that flexibility in their savings account without getting additional fees. So there's been a lot of things such as that has really given residents more of a voice in their banking. And I think too about like the overdraft fees, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit, but there's been some positive changes that have happened to give residents more confidence, I feel, where they not only feel secure, but they also feel like they're not going to be nickeled and dimed for all of these transactions and other things they might want to do. So so someone decides they want to go and start a banking relationship. What are some of the top bank accounts, type of accounts that, a resident might want to open?
All right, well, let's start with the basics. You have your savings account, which is exactly what it says. It's intended for you to save. So you have a limited number of withdrawals, and you have a interest rate, which is set by the bank or your credit union. And then your money will start bearing interest once it's deposited. Your standard checking account, and usually it's a 2-for-1 deal. You go in, you want to establish an account, you are going to get a savings and a checking account. And the checking account, gives you that flexibility, easy access to your money. Maybe you have an ATM or a debit card associated with that. And then, there are other financial instruments like a CD or a money market account. A money market account is very similar to a savings account in that money markets give you a shorter smaller number of withdrawals and typically a higher interest rate. And then if you are looking at a CD, and you are basically guaranteeing that I don't need access to this particular sum of money. I'm going to deposit this into a CD account, and it's for a defined period of time at a defined interest rate. And so you are expecting that to earn interest while it's in that CD. And of course, if you need access to that money, it's a little bit more restrictive. And if somebody does need to withdraw, there might be a penalty associated with that, or they could lose out on interest and potential loss of principal.
Okay, so one has to be pretty sure that they're not going to need those funds if they want to have all of the interest earned.
A careful balance between liquidity and funds that you want to invest.
Right, okay. Yeah, and I think CDs are great, and they're a way that residents can kind of lightly invest, but still it doesn't have to be forever. So you can do 6 months, a year, those are probably the more popular CD terms that even us at the city take advantage of, those 6 months to a year. And you get more interest than just a typical savings or money market, but there is that more limited access if you want to get the interest that residents should keep in mind. Going back to someone comes into the bank, they're going to open a checking and savings account. Talk to us about, especially you've had several different roles in your time in finance, but you've spent a lot of time in technology. And when I think about, when we think about savings, and we talked about that for our last episode about the importance of savings and having a savings account, and how, we need to have ourselves on a budget and put money aside. But the checking account is more of our operating account. And coming with that, when you have a checking account, talk to us about the technology and how that can play a big part of benefit for our residents.
So checking accounts can be linked to a number of services or features that your financial institution offers. And for one, I love the bill pay features. I love the web banking and having that 24-hour access. Many people don't even think about it, that they are in many times throughout the day less than 5 feet away from their bank at all times. And how are they that close? They have one of these, and they have access to their bank right on their phone all the time. And so I have the ability to check my accounts. I have the ability to pay bills online, and the flexibility now that I'm offered, it pales in comparison the days that we had to balance our checkbooks when we have those numbers at our disposal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's excellent. And I also use the bill pay service, and I think bill pay is fantastic. And I think sometimes residents get hung up on, because we still call it a checking account. And I don't know about you, but I don't use that many checks anymore. And I use the bill pay feature. Now, especially going through, just having a baby recently, even though he's 18 months now, there are those, doctor bills and everything like that, that they might not have, it's a little more, it's different to pay those online. Do you have any of those too, or you have to? So kind of walk us through what that looks like.
Well, we all know the process for ordering checks. And my teenage daughter and son, when do you need a check? Why would you ever need a check? We have a stack of checks, and once in a while, you still get a doctor or a vendor of some sort that doesn't accept a credit card payment or doesn't want to deal with cash, and they want that check. So you really, it's a necessity in banking to have that check available should you need it. And then maybe there's also a charity that doesn't accept modern type of payments for whatever reason, and you want to mail them a check, you can still have that ability to write that check and, yes, put it in an envelope and use the U.S. Postal Service to deliver it to them.
Excellent. And I think that there's so much great technology out there that residents, it'll make their lives easier, like the bill pay, like a debit card. But we still have to remember that everyone's still catching up. And to have a few checks on hand, to have some cash on hand, I think is good financial sense. But also now with the bill pay service, most banks and credit unions they'll send out checks for you through the bill pay service. So that's something that, residents more and more through the years have been taking advantage of, even when it comes to like the city of Warren, when we are collecting taxes, which we just kind of wrapped up the first part of that. We have residents that their bank through online bill pay will send us a check to the city of Warren. And it's that way they don't even have to get their checkbook out always. So there, like I said, there's a lot to be said about the bill pay service. Everything's tracked for you, right? So if you want to look, okay, was that check cashed or did they get my payment? It's all listed for you online. So, I mean, when I was younger and again, writing checks for everything, when I'm paying bills, it's like, okay, I'm watching my account to see when that check was gonna go through, as opposed to bill pay service where you just look it up and you see exactly what's happening in real time. So going back to, the bill pay piece is outstanding. because, again, that's so convenient, like you said, at your fingertips, and it's so fast to do it. Once you set these bills up, you'll have it listed like my payees and and you literally click, this one I want to pay, pay. Click, this one I pay, pay. So what used to take, I remember my mom, when I was younger, she would pay all the bills, again, everything by check, because that's how things were. And she would spend like an hour, hour and a half sitting down and paying all of our household bills, where now you can pay all your household bills in literally like 3 minutes, because after they're all set up, you just click and pay. So just saves you a lot of time. It's more secure going through their system. And I want to talk to you about that too, because I hear this a lot from residents, whether it's the city's online payment platform or online banking. There's worries of security. There's worries of concern. Can you kind of talk about that?
Absolutely. And so security in banking is paramount, because banking, when you are, if I'm handing you $100,000, what am I really handing you? I'm handing you my trust, and you have to earn that trust. Now that you've earned it, now you have to keep that trust. And so banks, financial services bureaus, the credit unions, anyone dealing with financials in our country are very tightly and heavily regulated, and they have to meet certain minimum standards. And I'll tell you, they all go above and beyond those standards for security. They have fleets of people working day and night to stay one step ahead of those cyber criminals that are looking to take advantage of the financial industry, just like they're trying to take advantage of hospitals and education. We're not the only ones that they're targeting, but they're after, they're trying to get, into our accounts, and the banks are keeping, those firewalls up to date and making sure their security measures and protocols are tightened down as absolutely as much as possible. And there are new threats each and every day that the banking industry is responsible for, to respond to. And you'll see that in practice. And I've heard it from other people. My application, I open up my app and it says I need to update again. Well, that's a great thing, because the application won't even allow you to finish your login, because it says there's a new version available, and that's because of two things. One, your bank has either updated, your financial institution has updated features that are going to make banking easier for you to do on your phone, or they're implementing a new security measure. And in order to do that, you have to download that next update. Updates are a very good thing. And so we want to embrace that. And I have several banking apps on my phone, and they all update, I would say, probably on a weekly basis, if not more often.
Excellent. That was something I forgot about as well. That's great advice about updates. And I think that when we think about the banking sector, financial sector in general, they're the ones that are really leading cyber security. And I know when there's been different things that have happened in Congress, and they've done different sessions where they've talked about cybersecurity, they're bringing in people like you who work in the banking technology sector, because you're the ones really leading forward. And where government, we're trying to catch up, but it's really the private financial sector is really the ones leading this charge, because they have to, right? Going back to what you just said, you have to have that trust. Customers and residents have to have that trust. And I think that just seeing all of the innovation and things they've been able to stop and prevent has been very encouraging. Unfortunately, there's been things more privately that I've seen in my time at the bank as well as treasurer that have been disheartening. People that have tried to do financial scams on residents. I'll never forget. It was right before I got elected. It was really when it was really ramping up. When I worked at worked at a bank here in Warren, and a resident came in and said they had gotten this phone call from this person, and they said that this resident's grandson was in danger and they needed money ASAP. And so thankfully this resident came in to see me, and I exchanged some words with the person on the phone that I won't repeat here. But I think that we have to make sure that we're letting residents know anything that seems suspicious or off, they need to come talk to their financial institution. I don't know if you had any other tips or feedback on that.
Oh, we could do an entire program on what not to do or what to look out for, but I will tell you right now, financial scams don't target any one particular audience. So yes, there might be sections of the population that criminals will target more often, but everybody is a target. If you have a penny in your pocket, you are a target for a financial crime. And we're in the days of point and click, or we get a text message and we're opening it right up. Oh, I got a text message from Lorie Barnwell. My water payment portal account has been hacked. Click here to verify my password. One of the most important things to remember is your financial institution will never, ever text you or send you an email asking you for your password.
Yes,
they
very
will
important.
never, ever do that. And so you see a text message like that, or it will be, if you don't respond to this in the next 10 minutes, your accounts will be locked and all of your money will be moved out to a different account. They're creating a sense of urgency.
Yes.
Enticing you to click right away. The best advice I could give anybody who receives a message like that is to stop, reread the message, and do not respond to it, and instead call your financial institution, reporting to them what you've received, and then validate with your financial institution, who you trust to manage your funds, is my account okay? And they will probably ask you to send a copy of that message to them, because then they investigate. Their cyber intelligence teams will investigate that, because it's probably not just you. This is not a one and done. They're targeting hundreds of thousands of people with that very same message, hoping that a very small percentage will jump on that message and do exactly what the criminals are telling them to do.
Yes, and I mean, even me, I get things like this, like your Amazon account is going to be frozen, which to me that's pretty scary if my Amazon account's going to be frozen. But I like what you said, that everyone is a target, and people who are trying to do these financial crimes will kind of find what is going to hook you. So for me, that was kind of Amazon was my hook, but other residents are going to have other things that might scare them or hook them into clicking on something. So I agree, if you get an email that says, click on this to verify such and such, or click on this to unfreeze your account, or click on this to change your password, click on this. So all of those things that they're trying to get you to put personal information in that they are absolutely, of course, not authorized to have. And I think even if we get something that may look legitimate, it's always best to call. It's always best to just make sure. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. So even if we are pretty much 99% sure it's coming from our bank, if there's like some kind of update, we can always call and just ask.
You bring up a very good point about it looking like your financial institution. It is very easy to download these days, download a logo, a financial institution logo, but what they cannot do is send email or send a text message. They might try to spoof and make it look very, very similar, but you'll typically see in these emails, they're not perfect. They contain spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, the telephone number is not present. All the typical information you might expect to see in there is conveniently missing. And it's focusing you on that particular link, which if you look at the link or where the originating email address is from, it probably doesn't say your banking institution's name, and it says something completely different. Those are some of the red flags to immediately tip you off. This is not a legitimate solicitation from my financial institution.
Right. No, that's very well said. And they will do things at first glance to make it look like that, but then you really step back and look at it in finer detail, and you'll see that, wait a second, the email does not match whatsoever of what they're saying.
They don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
They don't want you to step back. They want it
Right.
to look like it and take immediate action.
Right.
Click.
And that's kind of, can be human nature in general, where our first reaction is to respond. Our first reaction is to cling to fear. Our first reaction is like, when you're dealing with this or anything in life, stepping back and just taking a minute to just, okay, let me actually assess what's going on here before I just immediately respond.
You are your own first line of defense. And then you have your bank or your credit union to support you. They're your second line of defense. They're already on the first line of defense, protecting you from everything else, but now the criminals or the hackers are targeting you to see, hey, let's see if we can exploit a weakness.
Excellent. Very well said. What are some other tips that you would give? I know there's been a lot you've said already, but anything else where we can protect our identity, protect our financial accounts, any other tips that you would give residents in regards to that to make them feel more comfortable with the whole banking experience?
I know very few people who don't shop at Amazon. And as you mentioned, I think it's a great example to use. When you are purchasing anything online, whether it's Amazon or you're going directly to a supplier online to purchase goods or services, when you are purchasing online or making those online purchases, use a credit card. That way, if there's a compromise with that particular vendor, they don't have access to your bank, your savings account, your checking account that might have a substantial amount of money in it, and any amount that's taken illegally is substantial. I don't care who you are. If I have $100 taken out, it's like, oh gosh, I'm going to think about that for the next 2 weeks, and I've got to follow up and make sure that's returned to my account. With a credit card, those protections are already there. You can contact your credit card provider and let them know my account's been compromised if they haven't already notified you with a fraud alert saying, this activity looks a little unusual. We've frozen your account. Please contact us. And then you contact them and they go through the charges. Did you buy that, that new Corvette in southern France? Unfortunately, no, I did not. So yes, that's an unusual purchase for me.
Right. And I think you bring up a great point. And when you are buying things online, even if it's a more trusted company like Amazon, but even some of these smaller companies that, hey, I saw this online and I'm looking to buy it. If there is any issue and if something happens where they get that website didn't have all of the protections that you thought. If your card is compromised, it's literally a quick phone call, or you can do it online, close that debit card out. That's not only the first great thing about it, but then they'll just send you a new debit card, and then that number is gone, and nothing can happen. Also, the second thing is, kind of as you were saying, is if something does happen and they get your card number and charge something. I remember this was maybe a few years ago, something happened where they got one of my debit card numbers and they charged, I think it was like a few $100s of something. And I said, that's not me. less than a week later, that money's back in my account, my card's already been closed, and I already have a new card. So those things can turn around very quickly, and not interrupt the flow that much of our lives. If something happens with your checking account number, that makes things a lot more difficult, because then you have to go in the bank, open a new account. You have to change your account number with, perhaps your mortgage and all of these other things, get new checks, get new debit card anyway. So if I completely agree, if using your debit or credit card is safer and frankly easier to do, and a lot of these credit cards do offer rewards.
Absolutely.
And I know, do you have any cards like that
I
you use?
do. Yeah, and what you're referring to is called smart banking, using the proper financial instrument for its purpose and protecting your interests. While your financial institution is always looking out for you, you're doing your part to protect your interest. And yes, credit cards have many different programs, whether it's air miles or it's dining club options, travel options. If you make a lot of credit card purchases, put your money to work for you. If there's a reward to be reaped, then take advantage of it. But do take a look at annual fees. There's a lot of small print in those advertisements for all of these different offers. I can earn 75,000 air miles if I open this card. Okay, that's great. That sounds really good, because that's the biggest print that they're going to put on the envelope that entices you to open it. But in the fine print, it'll say there's an annual fee of $500. So then you have to balance the decision making. Do I want to invest the $500, and am I going to travel that much this year to where that would be worth it? Is the trip going to cost me more than $500? What else do I get for that fee every single year?
No, well said. And I also think too, credit cards, as you said, we can use things to our advantage. We can make wise decisions. But sometimes credit cards can also be a trap. And we can end up spending on there more than what we have. So I would tell residents who, we talked about in the first episode about really knowing yourself, knowing your financial pitfalls, knowing your weaknesses. And if credit cards and spending more than what you have is a weakness, that avenue might not work for you. Maybe a debit card is better as far as keeping your financial self in check. But I will say with the credit card too, there's ways that you can limit it, literally, is have a lower limit on your credit card. So for instance, okay, I'm going to spend about, between $500 and $1,000 a month. So that's going to be my limit. I am going to tell the credit card company, lower my limit to this. So that way you're keeping yourself better accountable. If you have a higher limit and you have a weakness of overspending, you're going to not reap any rewards from that. Truly, you're going to get yourself more stuck. So if you're going to use the credit card in a way that's going to help you and get rewards and make online purchases safely, et cetera, then that would be a good idea. But if not, that's a way of really understanding yourself. And everyone has pitfalls. Everyone has weaknesses, so the only shame is, I should say there is no shame in just owning that and finding ways that is best going to help you. I remember when I worked at the bank before, I had this resident that came in and was very honest with me and said, I even have a hard time with debit card because I purposely don't look at my account. I just keep swiping and I'm getting all these overdraft fees. I still want my account. I still do the online bill pay, but can you help me figure out a different system of, maybe that would work better for me? So we actually came up with an idea of, we had like 4 or 5 envelopes every 2 weeks. And okay, this is the money you have for going out with your friends. and then your account is basically paying your bills. So don't touch that money. That goes in by direct deposit. We're not going to touch that. Here's your gas money. Here's this money. Here's this. And then when it's gone, it's gone. So in that envelope, you kind of have to do some basic budgeting. But so it's really knowing yourself and how you're going to best be able to be financially successful. And this resident, after doing this for several months, was really on a good path. And maybe someday they'll be able to incorporate the debit card or credit card back in, but for that moment, that's what they needed. And I think there's a lot of strength in that. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And they were able to, oh my gosh, wow, now I don't have all these banking fees. I actually end up having more money, and I know exactly what I have for these next 2 weeks. So.
And you shared wisdom with them from your experience, knowing best practices and how best to look out for your customer. That's why they trust you.
Thank you.
And there are many apps today, even if your financial institution, maybe your credit card doesn't offer this, but there are small apps that you don't have to put financial information into, but will help do exactly what you've mentioned, the envelope system, that can do that on your mobile device, and you can budget and just put in the numbers and say, this is what my breakdown is, and it helps you keep track if you are, okay, I need a little bit more here, but I still have some left here, and it helps you have that visual, but it takes discipline and it takes practice. And one of the tips that I can offer is that many of the financial institutions today that offer a credit card also offer you the ability to pay it instantly. So yes, maybe I want to take my family out for a nice dinner, and let's say that bill is $150. I want to cash in on my double air miles for restaurant purchases, but I don't want to pay interest on that meal. I can use my credit card to pay for the meal. I cash in on the double air miles, and then when I get home, I log into my bank and I pay that amount right through my credit card app, and I've paid it just like I had used my debit card.
That's perfect. And I think going back to, as we kind of conclude here, that as when you have an account, a bank account somewhere, and then you have a credit card, that just makes things so much easier to pay, because then again, you're going right on your app. Okay, I'm just going to transfer it real quick, and it's done. And some of the other, when you have an account somewhere, whether it's a bank or a credit union, there are other services that they can help you with too, such as investment. We kind of talked about the CDs. We're going to do a whole different episode specifically on investments, but a lot of banking centers have an investment advisor right there at the branch that will help you if that's something you want to do. There's loan officer usually, whether it's a car loan, a home loan. So there's other services too that make it more convenient when you're already a member of a bank or credit union.
Absolutely. And there are so many options when you are looking for financial expertise. And my teenage children, ask the question, why do I even need to go into a banking center anymore? I can do everything on my phone. And I tell them it's all about relationships. Yes, I can transfer money, I can pay things online. We've talked about all the things we can do right here, but nothing beats the handshake. Nothing will ever replace the relationship that I have with my banking institution, and knowing when I walk in and I see Kathy behind the teller line and she says, "Hi, Jonathan," and we know each other, we trust each other, and there's so much to be said for that. And then they get to know you, and it naturally lends itself to, how's I noticed your mortgage is up to date, and we have this brand new loan program. Your car loan is coming up to the end. Are you interested in these other products? There's always something that your banking institution can offer to help simplify your financial experience.
Excellent. So well said. Well, we thank you so much for spending this time with us. We could have talked even so much longer, but we thank you so much for this time and being on this journey with us as we all continue to move forward in a healthy financial way. Thank you.